Welcome to week 4 in philosophy. This week we are continuing with Plato's Republic for the last week, and we will write our first short paper. This serves as the halfway point of the semester, and hopefully you have a good sense of what the course is like, and hopefully you felt successful, and hopefully you felt challenged. So you read Plato's Republic books 2 and 4 already, and you have done the reading questions. We will begin, I'll take you through the overview. By the end of this week, you're going to be able to finish the objective we started last week, which is to be able to analyze the immoralist challenge found in Plato's Republic, including the complete argument against it, which last week, with week 3, you of course only had the first part. But with books 2 and 4, you now have the incomplete argument. You will also be able to evaluate basic metaphysics. You may not know what that is. By the end of the week, you should. And you will be introduced to something called Plato's forms. Now, Aristotle is the philosopher we begin next week, and so this objective will carry over into week 5. So I say that this is just part 1. And this is not an objective that we have for our course and our syllabus, but I have the W here to stand for writing, and this is that by the end of the week you will be able to evaluate the philosophical questions from weeks 1 and 4, the question of your choice from weeks 1 and 4 in the writing of a short paper, number 1. So this is really a practical objective that just explains that you'll be able to complete that paper. So as I mentioned last week, the agenda, you're going to study the written lecture from books 2 and 4 of the Republic first. You'll begin posting immediately. Monday is your first post. You should have your second post on or around Wednesday. And then this discussion board on completing the immoralist challenge and justice will end by Friday. You will also begin reading the shorter passage from the Republic. It's only the very beginning of book 7. And this is famously called the Analogy of the Cave. And this gets us into objective 5 from the overview. Begin that on around Wednesday. You can begin using the journal reading questions as not only a guide but also an opportunity to explain your own thinking. There are only 2 journal reading questions this week, so it will probably feel shorter for you, and I'm glad for that. You will need to be much more elaborate in those 2 answers. I think I expect maybe a paragraph in each of them. And then finally, before you post, you'll want to study my written lecture on Plato's forms. And I've given you a couple of visuals this week to help you with that. You should start posting on Wednesday, and then it will end Friday night. I think this week, if you posted maybe last minute stuff Saturday morning, I think I might still read those, but Saturday is supposed to be reserved, as you learned last week, reserved for preparing your first short paper assignment. I would expect that by Saturday you're going to have it all organized. Any questions that you have for me, you might propose in an email. You would probably benefit from writing it out in standard form for yourself, and then when you actually write it into the essay, you need not use the standard form, but of course the kind of validity and soundness of the argument is going to fall much easier if you do that. Sunday then you'll spend time writing it. And again, this is short. It's only 600 to 900 words of text, and that is not a lot of time to get your argument out there. So make sure you get to the point quickly and that you take into consideration all the relevant objectives. In order to accomplish this agenda, the resources, again found in the lecture and resources folder, are going to be my 2 written lectures. The first is on the Republic, and it summarizes the argument from books 1, 2, and 4 as a whole. And then the second is my written lecture on this theory of the forms, which derives from the reading called The Analogy of the Cave. And this is pretty interesting. I might actually, depending on how well you guys are working through it, I might actually broadcast a lecture of me just talking about it at a whiteboard, because sometimes the visual aspect of this theory really helps students kind of grasp it. But we'll see how you guys are working on that and see if I need to add that in. The second, of course, the assignments that are due by the end of the week. The first is the discussion board post that begins on Monday. The second are the journal reading questions. The third is the theory of the forms discussion board, which will begin on Wednesday. And the final and most important is the short paper writing assignment. Before I close off here in this introduction, let's spend a few minutes talking briefly about the short writing assignment. I've quoted the syllabus here in the first part, and then I've given you some more extensive directions. First, I give you an introduction as to why we're doing this and what the purpose is. Then I give you some directions on what the paper is actually going to be. And it is going to be your answer to one of these 5 philosophical questions that we have begun considering the first 4 weeks. Are inductive arguments good arguments? Or is the divine command theory a valid theory in explaining morality? Or is intellectualism true? Or is Plato's definition of justice true? Or does Plato's argument in the Republic defeat the immoralist challenge? These are all legitimate philosophical questions. Some of them you probably actually find interesting, and those are the ones that you should probably attempt to answer. Because if you're engaged and you're interested, you're going to have a lot more luck writing a quality paper. Then I explain to you, or I just write very clearly, what you're supposed to actually have as a final product. This did not come out very well when I copy and pasted this from my Google Doc, but the logistics here sort of give you some just really basic information about how I would like this to look visually. You can write it in a Word document or a Google Doc and then submit it through the assignments portal in Blackboard. Times New Roman, size 12 is super normal. Spacing 1.5 spaces for the font. I'm going to score it using the writing rubric, which you guys have already become familiar with in previous writing courses. You do not need bibliography or sources, but of course, if you find some, you definitely need to cite them and let me know, and then just kind of a final word of admonition. Again, I think it will be a pretty successful week, but as always, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Good luck!